Hey guys, welcome back and thanks for being here. Today I am working on some nitrous control for my car, so we're going to talk about progressive nitrous control, how to program it, and also some of the wiring that I'm going to. I'm using a Mega Squirt, more notably it's a ECU from Stinger Performance. This particular ECU is in my Fox Body Mustang and they have an expansion port on it. So I have a little plug here for my ECU that I have to put some wires into so that I can have a nitrous input into the ECU, but also have my nitrous outputs for my different stages of nitrous. And mine will control up to 2 stages of nitrous, so I can have up to 2 solenoids that are being controlled with this. So for starters, there's a couple of jumpers on my Mega Squirt that I have to install so that it enables the inputs and also the outputs. And then from there we will be able to adjust the settings, make them come on when we want to, and then do some testing. That's the plan anyway. So nitrous bottle is filled. Now all I need to do is get this wiring squared away and I will be ready to test. If you remember from my last video also, there was one of the power harnesses for my gauges. The last gauge I ordered for nitrous pressure didn't come with one, and I want to give a shout out to GlowShift. They were amazing. They sent me one immediately free of charge, so I've got that harness to plug into, so I've got to wire up that other gauge power as well. So let's dig into getting this connector. There's only 3 pins that I need to use on this, so let's dive into getting that done, and then I will go ahead and get the jumpers changed on the ECU, and then we'll start doing some programming, the fun stuff. At least I'm a nerd, so I love that kind of stuff. But thanks for being here, guys. I appreciate you watching. Let's get to the project. With the connector that I got, see if I can get it to focus on that. So with the connector that I've got and the ends that I have, if you can see that, so these ends can crimp on or solder. I'm going to crimp them, and then the cable that I'm going to use is way overkill for this. If you just used some standard automotive wiring, that would be more than enough. Something like this would suffice, but I've got this laying around, and it is a actual 4-conductor shielded cable. So I'm going to go ahead and use this stuff, and it's got smaller conductors that will be easier to crimp in those really small connectors. So that is why I'm using it. If you don't have anything like this, you can always order it. Amazon's my favorite place to get anything, so go to Amazon, search for some control cable or multi-conductor cable. A lot of times this stuff is called Belden cable, B-E-L-D-E-N, so if you want something similar, you can search for a Belden cable. But this is what I'm going to be using. The program for my particular connector shows the pinout as, you see, N2O in, and then there's stage 1 and stage 2, so 3, 4, and 5. Those are going to be my my nitrous wires. So 3 is going to be the input, so we'll use that as the red since it's got to be a positive, and then the green and the white are going to be my signals, so that'll be on 4 and 5. So 3, 4, 5. That's what we're going to do. So I've got my cable constructed here, and you can't see it very well, but I've got those 3 pins. So I've got the N2O in, N2O1, and N2O2. Now I have to get into the ECU, and I am very thankful that mine came with a lot of diagrams, so it talks specifically about nitrous control. So right here you can see that it shows me where I need my jumpers. So there's one right here that I've got to have on N2O in, and then these 2 down here are for each stage, so I'll have to have the jumpers in those also. I finally got the ECU pulled out of here, and this is my expansion plug, and freaking bugs. I have my garage door open because it's hotter than balls in here right now. But anyway, so there's my expansion plug. So I'll just have to come right in the back here with my cord, which will be right about like that. It's going to be great. And then in addition to that, I've got to switch a few jumpers around. So there's one up here for table switching that'll have to go to nitrous, and then there's these two that are for the actual nitrous outputs that I'll have to change around. That is it. And for those of you that don't know, I know that I try to mention this as often as I can, but this is a Stinger Performance ECU, and they put them in a factory Ford case, which I love. And then the pinout, I mean, you literally just plug this directly into your harness for your Fox body. That's what I love about it. The shielded cable, it comes with a internal ground wire and then a shield around all these. It's for noise cancellation. Not really necessary in this application, but you know, it's what I had, so might as well overkill it. The red wire was my arming wire, and then the white wire was my solenoid wire. Add a couple of the world's favorite type of connector, the butt splice. And these two can now be connected to their respective pins that we connected to the ECU. So the next thing we've got to do is test our outputs. Well, after a bunch of testing, I have found out that the firmware version of my software is not allowing me to test my outputs. For whatever reason, it's not working on these outputs for the nitrous. So I decided to try to test it anyway, and what I ended up doing was, let me show you what I did. Bring you out to the outside of the car. I knew that I had everything hooked up to the right pins, but I needed to be able to test this output and make sure that the solenoid's going to fire when I want it to. So I unhooked my positive and negative wires from the solenoid. See right there, and I've got my multimeter put in there. So then what I'm going to do here with the multimeter, I'm going to watch it and see if I'm getting voltage. So I guess the challenge is making sure that your solenoid's going to turn on, but being confident that your fuel and timing that are getting pulled are actually working as well. So I wanted to test all of that before I actually started spraying the nitrous. So that's what this is all about. So this is just for testing purposes. What I want you guys to see is I've got my nitrous control is on, and then I've got my turn nitrous on when above 1,000 RPM, just for testing. Coolant, just so that I can test the output, and throttle position above 10%. And my enable input I've got set as the one that we wired up. The outputs are going to be those pins that we wired up as well. And then I've got additional fuel that it's adding. And then I've got my max RPM that it's going to add fuel, and then the timing that it's going to take off this. So here's what I'm going to do with those settings there. I'm going to turn the car on. I'm going to rev it above 1,000 RPM and make sure my throttle position is above 10%, and then we will see. I've got a couple of different gauges set up here, so I'll have my nitrous retard for timing and my nitrous fuel right here, and also there is a an indicator, so that'll go to a 1 if the nitrous output turns on, and then there's a special light that I put in here that will turn on with that too. So things first, let's start the car. There we go. Now we're going to make sure that we can free rev. We're going to make sure that we can rev the car up and that everything's good. My coolant temp temp, you can see we're at about 130. There we go. So that all looks good. Now we're going to arm our nitrous. You can see we've got no bottle pressure. It's not open. And we're going to watch our voltmeter here. Alright, so let's watch the voltmeter. So you can see that our output's turning on. Then you can also see in the computer that turns to a 1. We also have timing retard and extra fuel that it adds in there. And of course, go baby go! Awesome. All right, so that's really cool. So now we know that everything's working. We know that the output's firing. We saw on our voltmeter the output's working. We saw our timing retard and our fuel is working good. Our indication comes on telling us that our nitrous, that our output is on. So there you go. So the progressive stuff, then we get into if you turn your second stage on, and we get a few, yeah, see, so it tells me these settings change that require a power cycle to take effect. So let's give that a shot. We'll close that, cycle power to the ECU. Back on. And then we have an entire new page for our nitrous stage 2. So then here's our enable stage 2 above this RPM, and then here's the max RPM to spray. Here's the delay after stage 1 to wait. Here's our retard by degrees, and then here's our extra fuel at nitrous min and then max, so you can taper the fuel down to get it dialed into where you want it. So with TunerStudios, the nice thing about this is for the extra stages of nitrous that you get, you have an entire another page. So you can, when you're in just one stage of nitrous, then you can have, you know, it'll pull less timing and add less fuel, and then you get into your second stage of nitrous, it pulls more timing, adds more fuel. So that's the idea with the progressive stages of nitrous, is that you take a little bit more timing out, add a little bit more fuel, all within the ECU when those outputs are energized. So for right now, we're just going to do a single stage of nitrous. We're not going to spray the second one. That will be later down the road. So we're going to go back into our nitrous system control, and we're going to turn off that second stage. And we'll have to cycle power. Go back into our boost. There's our nitrous control. Perfect. Well, dang. I gotta say, the way that the nitrous comes on is awesome. And I didn't get any videos of the first few runs, but I gotta say, it hits like a freight train. So you can see right here, there's 3865, so the nitrous hits at 3800 RPM. Now, the thing that I noticed here is that our fuel drops down to 8.5 rate at 3800. Then it drops down to 7.2, which is just pig rich. So this is scaled for E85, so we're shooting for right around 7.8 to 8.0 in that range. And you can see right, so we drop down to 7.2, which is okay. It's not for very long, but right off the hit, it's kind of delayed, so it's about 200 RPM difference by the time it actually sees the nitrous into the intake. So I might spray a little bit sooner. We'll see. But anyways, so it comes on really hard, and then you can see right here we go up to about 9.4 on fuel, and again we want to be right around 7.8 to 8. So I added a point of fuel in here, and we'll have to go make some more test hits. But tell you what, the way that hits is just incredible. And the other crazy thing is I was able to rev this thing all the way out. I mean, it was insane. So you can see right about here is where the boost kind of fell off at, our KPA right here. So it kind of fell off a little bit after about 5,300 RPM. So we went from about, here, let's pull up the boost in PSI, the corrected boost. So you can see it kind of overlays it on top of the the KPA. What's interesting about that, so our boost is the green, 7.7. You can see we got right about, our max is 8.3. 7.7, 8.3, and it tapers off a little bit to like 5 at the end here, but I was still able to rev it out to about 6,200 RPM, which is super nice. Then when we pick up here again in the next gear, you can see we pick up right about 4,500 RPM, and it just carries it. The boost was really nice all the way through, right about 137, 138 KPA, and it fell off a little bit at the end, about 55, 5,600, but not bad. It was really awesome. Really happy with how that turned out. Golly, the nitrous just comes on so hard. So anyways, I added a little bit of fuel. So here is my nitrous control. You can see right in here. So we originally had an additional 7, and I don't know what it's, PW, I don't know what that is, but it's the fuel additive. So I had an extra 7.5, or it was actually 8 and 8 is what I started with. And on our log you can see that we started right here at 3,800 RPM. It starts with too much fuel and goes to we need a little bit more. So that's what I did. Instead of going with 8 and 8, I went to 7.5 and 9 on the top end, and it actually tapers between the two. So it'll taper between the 7.5 and the 9, kind of ramps it in. It was most certainly a project trying to troubleshoot that nitrous system. Hopefully you guys learned a little bit on how I did it with the voltmeter. Make sure that your outputs are working and everything with the system is functioning before you start spraying your nitrous. You don't want to get into a position where you're blowing stuff up. So hopefully that was helpful. I appreciate you guys for being here. I appreciate you watching. We're going to have some testing, and we'll see how much power we gain and what our intake temps do. And keep in mind, guys, we're spraying before the supercharger, and we're adding fuel in the engine. So the whole purpose of this is to spray before the superchargers to cool it down, also get a lower intake temp. That way we can make more power that way, but then also with the nitrous. So it's going to be really cool to see how this works. We'll do some data logs, we'll do some testing, and eventually get back on the dyno to see what this ends up getting us. So thanks again for being here. Thanks for watching. We'll see you on the next episode.